Before I begin, here's the complete story crafted for your YouTube narration. Writing. The hospital room had become a prison where time no longer existed. For 3 endless years, the young woman lying on the white bed had never opened her eyes, never smiled, never spoken a single word. Doctors had slowly stopped making promises, nurses had learned to whisper around her, and even her powerful billionaire father had begun visiting less often because hope had become too painful to carry. Then, on one ordinary afternoon, something happened that no machine could explain. A poor teenage boy, wearing faded clothes and worn-out shoes, accidentally brushed against her hand, and for the first time in 3 years, a single tear rolled down her cheek. That tiny tear would begin a miracle that would change not only 2 lives but everyone who witnessed it. If you believe kindness can create miracles and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more heart-touching stories that remind the world humanity still exists. Everyone in the city knew the name Richard Harrison. His fortune stretched across skyscrapers, luxury hotels, technology companies, and charities carrying his family name. People admired his wealth but envied something even greater. His only daughter, Emily, possessed a heart untouched by privilege. While other rich children surrounded themselves with expensive parties and glamorous lifestyles, Emily spent weekends volunteering at shelters, visiting orphanages, and quietly paying hospital bills for families she had never met. She believed money had value only when it eased someone else's suffering. Newspapers often praised her generosity, calling her the princess with a humble heart. Everything changed on a rainy evening shortly after her 22nd birthday. While returning from opening a children's learning center funded by her foundation, a speeding truck lost control on the slippery highway. Emily's car was crushed against the roadside barrier. Her driver died instantly, but surgeons fought through the night to save her life. They succeeded, yet victory felt empty. Emily survived physically, but her brain suffered severe trauma. She slipped into a coma that doctors warned could last weeks, months, or perhaps forever. Days slowly became months. Months quietly became years. Richard Harrison transformed the finest floor of the city's most advanced hospital into a luxurious medical suite. Every specialist from around the world was flown in. Experimental treatments were approved. The latest technology surrounded Emily's bed. Machines monitored every heartbeat while expensive medicines flowed endlessly through transparent tubes. But despite the millions spent, nothing changed. Every morning looked exactly like the morning before. Hope is strange. It fades differently for everyone. Doctors eventually spoke less confidently. Friends stopped visiting because seeing Emily motionless became too heartbreaking. Employees of the Harrison family learned never to mention her condition during business meetings. Richard himself aged dramatically. His once confident posture bent under invisible weight. Gray hair spread across his head much faster than anyone remembered. Every evening he sat beside his daughter, holding the hand that never squeezed back. Not far from the hospital lived 16-year-old Noah Carter. Noah had never known luxury. After losing both parents in a factory accident when he was 8 years old, he was raised by his elderly grandmother in a tiny rented apartment with cracked walls and leaking ceilings. Every morning before school, Noah delivered newspapers. After classes, he worked at a neighborhood grocery store stacking shelves and carrying heavy bags for elderly customers. Every coin he earned went toward rent, food, and medicine for his grandmother, whose weak heart required constant treatment. Life had taught Noah something unusual. Despite having almost nothing, he refused to become bitter. Whenever he found someone struggling even more than himself, he instinctively offered help. He shared lunches with hungry classmates, repaired broken bicycles without charging money, and volunteered at local shelters whenever he could spare an hour. His grandmother often told him that true wealth could never be counted inside a bank account because the richest people carried kindness in their hearts. One afternoon, the grocery store owner asked Noah to deliver fresh fruit baskets to the private hospital. Wealthy patients frequently ordered premium deliveries, and Noah accepted the extra work gratefully because every additional dollar mattered. Walking through the shining marble hallways, Noah felt as though he had stepped into another world. Crystal lights reflected from polished floors while expensive paintings decorated every wall. Everything appeared perfect, yet strangely empty. After completing his deliveries, Noah noticed an elderly cleaner struggling to push a heavy supply cart that had become stuck near one of the private rooms. Without hesitation, Noah helped free the wheels and pushed the cart all the way down the hallway. The grateful cleaner smiled warmly and offered him a bottle of water before returning to work. As Noah prepared to leave, he accidentally entered the wrong room while searching for the exit. There, surrounded by silent machines and soft afternoon sunlight, lay Emily Harrison. She looked peaceful, almost asleep, yet something about the room felt unbearably lonely. Fresh flowers decorated every corner, but none of them could hide the sadness lingering in the air. Feeling embarrassed, Noah turned to leave. As he stepped backward, he lost his balance slightly and instinctively reached out. His fingertips gently touched Emily's hand for only a brief second. At that exact moment, one monitor emitted an unusual sound. A nurse rushed inside. Then another. Before anyone understood what had happened, a tiny tear slowly escaped from Emily's closed eye. The room froze. Doctors immediately began running tests, but every result confused them. Her condition remained medically unchanged, yet for the first time in 3 years, her brain activity showed subtle responses unlike anything previously recorded. Richard Harrison arrived within minutes. Hearing the staff explain that a delivery boy had accidentally touched his daughter's hand before the unexpected reaction, he stared silently at Noah. There was nothing magical about the boy's appearance. His clothes were simple. His shoes were worn. His hands showed rough calluses from endless work. Yet Richard couldn't ignore what everyone had witnessed. Although the doctors insisted it was likely coincidence, Richard politely asked Noah if he would consider visiting Emily occasionally. Noah hesitated. He worried about missing work, disappointing his grandmother, and entering a world where he clearly didn't belong. But remembering the loneliness he had seen in Emily's room, he quietly agreed. From that day onward, Noah visited every Sunday afternoon. He never pretended to understand medicine. He simply sat beside Emily and spoke from the heart. He described sunsets he had seen while delivering newspapers. He talked about neighborhood children chasing kites through empty fields. He shared funny stories about customers who argued over vegetables before laughing together moments later. Sometimes he read novels borrowed from the public library. Other times he simply held her hand while describing dreams he hoped one day to achieve. Unknown to everyone, those simple moments slowly awakened distant corners of Emily's sleeping mind. Inside the darkness of her coma, memories floated like scattered stars. Voices came and disappeared without meaning. But Noah's gentle words somehow reached deeper than expensive medical equipment ever could. His stories reminded her of laughter, compassion, childhood adventures, and the simple beauty of ordinary life she had once cherished. Weeks turned into months. Doctors began noticing gradual improvements impossible to ignore. Her fingers occasionally twitched. Her heartbeat responded when Noah entered the room. Brain scans revealed increasing neurological activity. The impossible suddenly seemed possible. News quietly spread throughout the hospital. Nurses adjusted schedules hoping to witness the remarkable visits. Even skeptical doctors admitted something extraordinary was happening, although none could scientifically explain why. Richard watched every change with cautious hope. For the first time in years, he smiled without forcing himself. As months passed, he also began noticing Noah's exhausted appearance. One evening he discovered the boy often skipped dinner because he couldn't afford enough food after purchasing medicine for his grandmother. Deeply moved, Richard secretly arranged full medical care for Noah's grandmother without revealing who paid the bills. He also established an educational scholarship under another name, ensuring Noah could continue studying while working fewer exhausting hours. Noah remained unaware of these acts of generosity. He believed life had simply become a little kinder. Then came the morning no one would ever forget. Sunlight streamed gently through Emily's window as Noah sat reading another chapter from an old adventure novel. Halfway through the story, he felt movement. Very slowly. Emily's fingers tightened around his hand. The book slipped onto the floor. Her eyelids trembled. After 3 years of endless silence, Emily opened her eyes. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Nurses called doctors. Specialists rushed inside. Machines beeped excitedly. Richard arrived breathless, hardly believing what he was seeing. Emily looked around with confusion before her eyes settled on Noah. Although she remembered almost nothing, tears quietly filled her eyes as she continued holding his hand, as if somewhere deep inside she recognized the voice that had guided her home. Recovery was neither quick nor easy. Emily had to learn to walk confidently again. She spent months rebuilding memories, strengthening muscles weakened by years without movement, and adapting to a world that had continued living while she remained asleep. Throughout every challenge, Noah remained nearby. Not because anyone asked him, but because friendship had quietly replaced obligation. As Emily regained her memories, doctors asked whether she remembered hearing anything during the coma. She described darkness filled with distant echoes. Most voices disappeared before reaching her. But one voice repeatedly told stories filled with hope instead of fear. One voice reminded her that life outside still contained beauty worth returning to. That voice belonged to Noah. Medical journals later discussed Emily's recovery for years. Specialists debated neurological stimulation, emotional connection, subconscious awareness, and countless scientific theories. Each explanation contained pieces of truth, yet none fully captured what everyone had witnessed. Sometimes healing begins where medicine ends. Months later, Emily insisted on visiting Noah's neighborhood. She walked through streets she had never noticed before despite living in the same city all her life. She met families struggling quietly behind forgotten apartment buildings. She saw children studying beneath broken streetlights because electricity frequently failed. She understood suffering more deeply than ever before. The experience transformed both her and Richard. Instead of expanding luxury businesses alone, the Harrison Foundation invested heavily in affordable housing, education, community health clinics, and scholarships for hardworking children from low-income families. Noah became one of the foundation's youngest advisors, ensuring every project respected the dignity of those receiving help rather than treating charity as publicity. His grandmother lived long enough to watch the boy she had lovingly raised inspire thousands. Before passing peacefully, she held Noah's hand and whispered that kindness had returned everything life once stole from them. Years later, whenever journalists asked Emily about the miracle that saved her life, she never focused on wealth, famous doctors, or groundbreaking technology. She always spoke about a poor boy who possessed something rarer than money. He carried compassion without expecting reward. He offered friendship without seeking recognition. He gave hope when everyone else had quietly surrendered. And somehow, that hope reached a heart sleeping beyond the reach of science. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to our channel, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your support encourages us to continue sharing stories that remind the world compassion is still alive. Special request: before you leave, please comment with the words, "Kindness creates miracles," if you believe that one small act of compassion can change someone's life forever. The greatest miracle was never that Emily woke from her coma. The greatest miracle was that, in a world where people often measure value by wealth, power, or status, a struggling boy with empty pockets reminded everyone that the strongest force on earth is a compassionate heart. Money built the finest hospital room, hired the greatest doctors, and purchased every available treatment, but it was simple human kindness that finally reached a soul lost in silence. From that day forward, thousands of lives changed because one boy never stopped believing that every lonely person deserved company, every hopeless heart deserved hope, and every act of goodness, no matter how small, could become the beginning of someone else's miracle. Long after the headlines disappeared and the world moved on, people who knew their story remembered one unforgettable truth: sometimes the hand that changes your life is not the richest one, but the kindest one.